Enjoy all episodes of the RCWR Show on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Spreaker, and iHeartRadio.
I literally a couple of hours ago got done watching the It's Good to Be the King, the Jerry Lawler story that was released by WWE last week. I finally got a chance to watch it today, and I gotta tell you, what a fantastic DVD. The time for the documentary piece, it just flew by so freaking fast. It was ridiculous. I wanted more storytelling. I was just craving it. I wanted more. I'm hoping there's extras on there. I was playing around with the first disc. I have it on Blu-ray, so I'm actually reviewing the Blu-ray edition, although I didn't get that far. I tried to see if there was any extra stories on the first disc, any Easter eggs. There were none. I was a little bit disappointed with that. Hopefully there's something on the second disc. Those of you that already have it, please don't spoil it for me, because that's something that I love to do. I love just playing around with the menu, subchapter categories and all that. I love being surprised. I don't do like some people and they basically see all the contents of the daggone thing before they even watch it. I don't like operating like that. But I love the story. It just reels you in. And I love the way that it reels you in from the moment that it starts. You just have Jerry Lawler. He's in his studio and he's doing a drawing while he's talking, and he's just freestyling, drawing his crown. And it's so cool the way that he draws it and all that. And that like pretty much just reels you in right there. And I gotta tell you, anybody that is a inspiring or aspiring artist, or anybody that currently has been an artist for a long period of time, maybe you had a situation like me where you got a little bit burned out, you stopped drawing, you stopped painting for a couple of years. I tell you, when you're watching this Jerry Lawler story, I mean, more than once we are seeing this man do these really awesome drawings as he's telling stories. You just can't help but like get that itch afterwards to like pick up a pen, a sketch pad, and just start freestyling on some stuff. I can't stress that to you. One of the first things that really jumped out to me off the break, and I love the origins for Jerry Lawler, as he talked about how he was born and raised in Memphis, and he talked about how his dad had worked for the Ford Motor Company, and back then, like, the highest amount of money that his dad ever took home was like $99. And the moms had to take that $99 and $25 of that had to go towards groceries. And as you would imagine, the rest of that probably had to go to transportation, bills. Now, to you guys, it's like $99. Wow, that's like a punk ass amount. But you got to think about the period of when Lawler was born. I mean, we're talking like the 1940s or whatever like that. So, I mean, back then, you could go out on a date and you could get like fries, a hamburger, and you could get like that for you and, you know, a friend or whatever for like maybe $1 back then or something like that. It might have been way lesser than that. It might have been actually 50 cents or something like that for two people, you know. I mean, the prices were really low back then. So, I mean, just imagine that, you know, you're working hard, you're doing these grueling hours for the Ford Motor Company, you bring in $99, family of four, gotta eat, you gotta get the groceries, you got bills, you're probably going to need to invest that same amount of money into transportation, and then let's not also forget, you got to take care of the rent, however they have that set up. So interesting times way back then. Jerry Lawler had covered how he first had met Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart, as you hardcore fans know, he was involved in a pretty popular rock band called the Gentry. That's pretty much how the two of them had crossed paths. They crossed paths at like the same high school and all that. And way back then when Jerry was a kid, I mean, he was just hardcore into the drawing and all that. When you see some of his earlier work, I mean, it's pretty freaking obvious that, yeah, this young man has talent, and if he keeps it up, he's probably gonna like have a freaking awesome career somewhere, whether it be with DC Comics, Marvel Comics, Image Comics, whoever, or maybe he's going to be hooked up with Disney or DreamWorks. He's definitely going to have a pretty successful career if he sticks to it. And it's just so interesting how he basically got his foot into wrestling, because what ended up happening was, as he got a little bit older, and I think it was while he was still in high school, he ended up showing some of his artwork while he was going with his dad to some of the matches or whatnot. Because what he would do, his dad was an usher. His dad would do cleaning at these wrestling events, and Jerry would kick back and he would do these little cool cartoon drawings and all that of what all he had saw happen in the ring. Somebody that was connected to Lance Russell, famous Memphis wrestling announcer, got wind of it, and the friend was like, look, let me pass along these drawings and all that to Lance Russell, and if he likes it, we'll have him give you a call and see if maybe you could do some more work for us or whatever. And Lance Russell, sure enough, like what he saw in Lawler's work, called him up, said, hey, we'd love for you to supply more artwork for us. We could feature your stuff on TV every single week. So that was kind of like how officially Jerry Lawler got his foot in the door, both feet in the door, to say the least, in professional wrestling. And eventually that just like set up this domino effect where one day Jerry Lawler would end up taking over. It was a weird graveyard shift. I think he worked like 7 to 12 or something like that. Nobody wanted the shift to do radio, and somehow the job ended up being presented to him, and he was like, yeah, sure, I'll go ahead, I'll do it. So sweet spot for him. He was plugging his artwork, wrestling shows, and he was doing the whole DJ work and all that. And his life would forever change, as at this point, while he's doing the DJing and all that, he really wanted to get in the ring, and he wanted to wrestle. And he would actually have that opportunity. It would come courtesy of Jackie Fargo. I mean, pretty much the rest was history after that. Jackie Fargo was like the original king of wrestling when it came to Memphis and all that. What I thought was the most interesting about this DVD was I love how they showed 15 minutes of fame, if you will. That's the best way I can call it. But if I were to really break that down even more, Jerry Jarrett Sr. This was like his first time ever appearing on a WWE DVD documentary piece or whatnot. He shined big time on this one, and I loved it tremendously. They had talked about how Memphis promoter Nick Goulas, basically the way the territories was set up in Memphis for the east side, Goulas was controlling Birmingham. Jarrett was controlling Evansville, Memphis, Louisville. And Jarrett was under the impression that because of X amount of money he was giving to Nick Goulas, that it was buying him a percentage of the company, of the Memphis territories. So he thought he was going to be able to run shot calls and all that as well. But he would learn the hard way from Nick Goulas that, no, the only thing that you were doing with the money that you've been giving me all this time is giving yourself an option. Basically, Nick was just taking this money, and there really were no benefits for Jarrett. Jarrett wasn't getting anything back in return. I mean, can you just imagine that? You're coughing up all this money thinking you're making an investment into something, and then it turns out you're not getting that. You're not getting that investment back in full at all. So Jerry, frustrated, he went to Jerry Lawler, he said, look, this is what I plan on doing. I plan on going into business for myself, starting up my own promotion. I'd love it if you could team up with me and, we do our own thing. And they hooked up. Sure enough, I mean, it was like a domino effect. They, Jackie Fargo, Lance Russell, key members from over at Channel 13, was when they were originally airing the Memphis Wrestling and all that out there. They went from Channel 13, secured a deal with Channel 5 and all that. And I mean, their promotion, it was just catching fire. It was freaking white hot. And eventually Nick Goulas, his promotion and all that, it just ceased to exist. He went out of business. Karma is a bitch. I'm telling you, karma is a bitch. One of my favorite highlights of this documentary piece definitely goes to Andy Kaufman. I loved how they brought in Bill Apter for that, because it was actually through Bill Apter who I hope, when it comes to like the celebrity wing of the WWE Hall of Fame, I hope to some type of an extent Bill Apter gets in there, because he has seen it all, and honestly, he has been a great ambassador for professional wrestling. He needs to be honored already, especially with his long history going back to the WWF days with Vince McMahon Sr. and all that. But I don't want to give it all away as far as Andy Kaufman goes, but it was basically through Bill Apter did Jerry Lawler cross paths with Andy Kaufman, and that was a really great spot right there. That was a really great segment. I wish they would have followed up more on that, like in particular, I wish that they would have talked about that Jim Carrey movie, Man on the Moon, because I know Jerry Lawler had played a little bit of a part in that. Of course, Jim Carrey, he played Andy Kaufman, and I know for many years, every time the topic of that movie would be brought up, Jerry would always express his disgust, concern over the way Jim Carrey had portrayed Andy, cause Jerry was definitely offended by the way Jim was conducting himself and all that, and he didn't really feel that Jim was really living up to the role and everything, cause I think, I can't remember verbatim, but I want to say Jerry said that of Jim Carrey's interpretation of Andy Kaufman, that like he was a jerk, he was a obnoxious little prick or whatever, and that was like far from what the real Andy Kaufman really was. But you guys that are like wrestling historians, you remember your wrestling from the 80s, 70s and beyond that, you would definitely appreciate the way that the Andy Kaufman segment was handled. They also had talked about the Mid-South Coliseum, how it was just so white hot leading on up until the 80s when you had WCW and WWF. They started doing their thing, and they were pretty much just pulling a boatload of talents from both of those, from the Memphis promotion that Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett were running. They were talking about how WCW, WWF/E, they were just taking talents from their promotion, but like it didn't matter because they were just able to continue to pump out new stars. But it was like for every batch of new stars they were able to produce, they would eventually go over to the WWE or the WCW, and eventually it just led to a period where in the late 80s, and I'm sure many of you guys remember this, there was a super clash that had came about where it had saw Jerry Lawler take on Kerry Von Erich, and it was a unified championship match. And as it was well documented in the spectacular legacy of the AWA, there was a lot of politics, a lot of backstabbing, all the promoters trying to get on the same page as far as booking and trusting one another and all that. It was just a freaking headache. And as far as Lawler was concerned, he knew from the moment that all this stuff was going on, from the moment that those guys couldn't even decide on what they all wanted for lunch, he knew that there was going to be significant problems. And, for him, he tried to be supportive of it because this was kind of like, this is it. All the promotions were trying to get together for like that one last hoorah. And as far as him going to the WWE goes and all that, pretty much. And I thought this was very, very interesting. You guys know during that period there where it looked as though Vince McMahon was possibly going to be going to prison and all that. Well, it turns out, and this was very eye-revealing, I'm surprised a lot of other wrestling websites have not touched upon this just yet. Maybe they will after I've put this out there. But at least the way I interpreted this, anybody that saw the DVD, this part that I'm getting ready to talk about, if I am wrong, hit me up on social media, let me know. But I'm pretty sure I had this accurate. All right. Apparently, it looks as though there was a plan that was set in motion for if Vince McMahon was going to do prison time, Jerry Jarrett was going to take over the WWE. So it's like when you hear that, it's kind of like, well, damn, that's very interesting. Yeah. What would have happened, you know, but the way they portrayed it, that's how things would have went down because they were prepared. They were prepared for Vince McMahon to be going away for a long period of time. And Jerry Lawler said that, you know, as far as like the mentality, like the thought process went into that, Vince probably looked at Jerry and said, okay, you know what? Other than myself, Jerry is probably the only other promoter that somehow managed to do very well for himself with his respective promotion after all these years, you know? So I thought that was very interesting, right there. Very interesting right there. One thing that I thought was a little bit disturbing that they should not have shown, they actually had covered when he had the heart attack back in 2012 in Canada. They covered the whole, it was very tough to watch, man, but they had showed footage of when technically he was like dying or whatever or dead, and you know, they were doing CPR on him. You know, that was just really tough to watch, and I wish WWE didn't show that stuff. I just could have went without that. I really could have went without that. Stacy Carter, the ex-wife of Lawler, Kitty, aka the cat, she popped up on there. Jerry Lawler's new girlfriend popped up on there. Brian Christopher, Jerry Lawler's kid, he popped up on there. Surprisingly, they did not cover the dark period there where Brian Christopher, he had it made in the WWE for a hot minute with Too Cool and all that, and then how the demons would come and, you know, kind of eventually have Brian Christopher be out of the WWE. I kind of would have thought that would have made great conversation. I don't know, maybe it's on the extra. Again, I haven't seen the second disc. Please do not spoil it for me for those of you that have already watched it. Jerry Lawler's 2010 match, that was for the WWE Championship against The Miz. That match is actually on there. Overall, it was a really, really great DVD. A really, really great DVD. I wish they would have homed in more on the old school stuff. I would have just loved to have just came away with more knowledge of what it was like in the Memphis territory days. That really would have just, you know, I could have just for 3 hours if they would have just cranked it up, you know. It was a very short documentary piece, very short. I was expecting it to go 3 hours, but it didn't go that route, but it was very well produced. I enjoyed it, and what makes this DVD very unique in itself is that for the very first time in like history, Jerry Lawler, he actually had picked what matches were to be shown on this DVD, and he picked a handful of stuff from his Memphis promotion, and apparently WWE had to pony up quite a lot of money for a lot of that footage. So I can't stress it to you guys enough. Scoop it up. Grab it when you all get a chance. I was lucky, because what ended up happening with me, I'm trying to think when I had got the DVD originally. I think I got the DVD originally, I want to say it was a Thursday. It was a Thursday I had got the DVD. And I remember I had such a bad headache. I went to go lay down, and the girlfriend was nice enough to go get the DVD. And originally, when I was looking it up online, it was like, doesn't look like the Best Buy down the street has it. She's like, that doesn't make any sense. The DVD just came out. What are you talking about? And I told her, I said, well, according to this, it's not available at the store. And she's like, well, try a different search. So I did something weird, and basically it said limited stock. And she said, okay, well, I'm going to try my luck. I'm going to go down here, see if I can scoop it up. And like 20 minutes later, she sent me a text. She said, I got it. I said, awesome. So when I saw her again, I asked her, I said, how was the quantity? Did they have a lot of copies? You know, what's the feel that you were getting? And she said, honestly, I had a hard time looking for it. I was about to give up. But then I went and asked for help, and yeah, they only had like just a handful of copies left. So I would imagine that like the purest hardcore wrestling fan, especially like a hardcore fan of Jerry Lawler that could appreciate those old territory days, they probably was buying those copies like I don't know what. So good luck to you in hurrying up and securing your copy. Hopefully this can be the start of something ongoing with Lawler. I would love to see more DVDs be released where maybe more old Memphis matches could be shown, and maybe Jerry Lawler can be like the special host or whatever, kind of like with what they're doing with the whole Best of ECW and all that. I hope that's the route that they go. But this DVD, it definitely gets a pass from me. Despite the fact that I wish they would have homed in on more territory talk and all that, it gets a pass, a strong pass. I'd have to give it an 8 out of 10. Only an 8 out of 10 because I wanted to hear more talk of the territory days. I'm like a sponge for wrestling of yesterdays. I really am. All right. So hopefully that review helps you guys out.
Thanks for listening. An Infinity One Productions presentation, keeping it honest, insightful, and interactive.